Welcome. I'm here with Jerry Sargeant. He's the founder of Star Magic, and we're going to do 3 parts. The first part will be Jerry talking about his life before Star Magic and creating the Star Magic and how he got to that position. Then part 2 will be Star Magic, what it's all about, and go in depth on that part 2. And part 3 will be we're going to go outside the subject a little bit, but still connected. We talk about truths and what's going on in the world, and just a general discussion, see what comes out. So this is part 1. So introducing Jerry now, and life before Star Magic. Who were you? What sort of person were you?
What sort of person was I? Very egotistical.
Okay.
Money driven, selfish. I was just out for myself. My life was completely different. I was a completely different person, and I've evolved and changed and transformed, and still am evolving, transforming and changing and working on myself and trying to make myself a better human being, growing day by day with all of the challenges and lessons that life throws your way. But yeah, my life before Star Magic was a lot darker than it is now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the lower end of the light, I say. So you're now high vibration, as we call it, high light. So you're the lower light. So, but it's a journey, and it's you get more experience, I guess, that way. And
you know what I feel is that we all have high and low vibrational elements of us. We're both dark and light. We're the devil, we're God. They're just labels, but we all have the capacity to do wrong. We all have the capacity to do good things. My life before was smuggling drugs, guns, lots of high profile kind of bank frauds was what I was into. I was involved in lots of things that I'm not proud of, but things that I would never change because they were part of my journey. And I feel that I went through this journey for many different reasons, but I learned so much about the world. I certainly learned where I didn't want to be in the world, and I learned how not to treat people, because I used to work with some horrible people. My first bosses, were real high profile criminals, and I saw how they treated people, how they treated me. And you go through these kind of experiences and you realize this isn't the way to be in the world. But until you kind of go through all of that, it's kind of hard to really experience the depths and the magnitude of how dark some people can be. And when you experience it, when I was young, I loved it. I was young when I got into this stuff, but as I grew and evolved and had other experiences, I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible.
okay. So just to state, Star Magic is a healing modality, and you facilitate of the healing. Just to give the people an idea what Star Magic is.
So Star Magic is a frequency. I mean, how I came about understanding this stuff was through, again, a whole series of events which took me from all of these criminal activities to traveling around the world, training people to heal with this frequency. In a nutshell, if you look at a human being, like I look at you right now, you look like a physical being. I'm a physical being, but beyond that we have a metaphysical nature, a quantum nature, an invisible nature to most people's eyes. But when you have an activated third eye and you're tuned into the spirit world, you can see what is beyond the physical form. So what we do is we train people to change the code that is beyond the physical form. If you look at a computer screen, for example, and you look at a website and the website is green, if you want to change that website to be a yellow website, you go into the back end of the system, you change the code, and the front end of the website then changes from green to yellow. If you have a disease in your body, there's going to be an information stream, codes, that is creating that disease, whether it's from experiences that you've had in this life or experiences that you've had or are having right now in parallel realities or past lives, because everything's simultaneous. There's no future and past in the quantum field. Everything's present, everything's now. So what I'm able to do is to go into that invisible field, see the pattern, the frequency, the light stream, the information stream that is creating that disease, change it. If I change it in the quantum field, it manifests in the physical. Just like the website going from green to yellow, the body goes from no liver disease, or from liver disease to no liver disease, from tumor to no tumor, from fibromyalgia to no fibromyalgia.
Okay, so that's a big, so what you're talking about now seems so enlightened to where you were before. That's like a big step, that is.
A massive step.
Massive step, but even beyond, because I've been doing healing for decades, or 15 years, but your step seems quite big. What was the big thing that happened in your life in the past that made you take a healing route?
I mean, there was a series of big things. I mean, I tried to resist this path as much as I possibly could. When I found out about all this stuff and started going on this journey, on one hand I was curious, I wanted to know everything, but on the same note, I found it really difficult to tell all of my friends about what I was up to, because they thought that I was crazy, that I was mad, that I'd lost the plot. So to come out and tell people in the world that I was into this spiritual, esoteric, love-based stuff, it was like, Jerry's gone nuts, but the universe just kept kicking me in the ass.
What sort of messages?
So the first thing that happened is back in 2006, I was in Romania with my ex-wife and children in a car, in a taxi, going to the airport. It was really early in the morning, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark. I was asleep in the passenger seat, and I wake up and I hear a loud crash. The car is swaying from side to side. There's glass, there's wind everywhere. And I think to myself, shit, we're in a bad accident. Boy, man, we're either going to hit the oncoming traffic or the car's going to flip over. And then all of a sudden we came to a stop. And I looked at the taxi driver, he looked petrified. I looked at the windscreen and there was a big hole. There was blood dripping down my face. I looked in the back, my daughter was underneath the driver's seat. There was no seatbelts in the taxi. My ex-missus had our son, he was like 2 at the time, Josh. He was in her arms, both their mouths are full of glass. So I get out of the car, I look back about 30 meters up the road and I see these 2 ladies. One of them had her ankles cut off and one of them was sort of like, nursing her, screaming, like looking after her. There was a man, he'd come out from a nearby factory, he's on the mobile telephone. So I'm thinking, he must be calling the emergency services. I've looked about another 100 meters up the road and there's what looked like a dead body. Checked on the missus and the kids, they're okay. So I've walked past the lady with the ankles cut off, walking towards what looked like a dead body. I've got closer and closer and I saw this lady's soul. I now know it was the lady's soul. At the time, I was just seeing this kind of invisible, like transparent kind of like energy. Like I saw the arms, legs, everything, but it was like transparent and I could see what was the other side. I could see the fields and the roads and everything through this energy, but it was just hovering above the body. And I got closer and closer and then this energy just kind of like disappeared and fizzled into the ether. I've looked down at the lady's body and her legs were wrapped up over her head. She was completely smashed to pieces. And it was like someone had taken an old car to the scrap heap. Like this energy, this soul had no use for this physical body anymore. So boom, it had just gone. No love lost, on its merry way. And I kind of saw this kind of like complete disconnection and separation, and also as well the relationship between the soul and the body all just kind of hit me, and I was like, no way. And I looked up to the heavens and it felt like I wanted a cigarette and a whiskey. I felt like it was like a momentous occasion. I didn't feel sad, I didn't feel upset for the lady on the floor. I didn't even see her as a lady. I just saw this empty vessel and realized that what was inside of it was really what was the important part.
Would you say your third eye was open already, or was you allowed to see this for your experience? Have you?
I've not got a clue. I mean, I saw what I saw, and I didn't even see this with my third eye. I saw this with my eyes. This wasn't a mind sight thing. When you see something with your third eye, it's completely different from seeing it with your eyes. You know, it's very kind of like fluffy and, not fluffy, but sort of like translucent, transparent, like I'm describing, but you're seeing it in a different context, because you're seeing it with your mind's eye. It's not so kind of tangible, but you can still see it. Whereas this energy source, it was like I could have reached out and grabbed it. I probably would have done if I wasn't in so much shock. I probably would have tried to put my hand through it or grab it or whatever it was, because it was there.
So was that your very first paranormal event in your childhood, or is it?
Before this car accident, there was one more thing that happened, but it didn't happen to me. I can't remember how long before it was. It was maybe a year before. I was sat watching TV one night, and my ex-missus comes downstairs, and she looked petrified, and she's, "Jerry, every time I close my eyes, I see all these dark images, and it feels like something's trying to take me away." And I looked at her and I thought, what the hell are you talking about? But I thought, okay, you're my wife, I love you. You know, so I said, you know, what do you want to do about this? She said, I want to call my friend. So she knew a priest. So anyway, she calls her friend, her mate comes around the house, she's putting crosses up, she's dousing the house and all this stuff. And I'm sat there thinking, this is like the Poltergeist or something like that, like one of the films I watched when I was younger. So anyway, she does all this stuff around the house. She calms Laura down. Laura goes to bed. The next day I go and see my friend, and I said, listen, this really weird thing happened in our house last night. Laura came downstairs, she told me she's seen all these dark images, blah, blah, blah. My mate said to me, listen, you've got to speak to this lady. So he gave me the name and a telephone number of a lady that lived the other side of the country. So I phone her up. She didn't answer. I left a message, and she calls me back a bit later. And I explained the story, and she says, you know, where do you live? I said, well, we live at 316 Richmond Road. That's the only part of the address that I gave her. She said, hold on a minute. The phone went quiet, and she said, have you been knocking some walls down in your house? I said, well, we haven't been knocking some walls down. We've actually just moved into this house, but the previous owner has definitely built an extension. She said, yeah, you've got an angry old man in your house. I said, what do you mean we've got an angry old man? She said, yeah, you got an angry old man. So I'm like, okay, let's pretend there is an angry old man. What am I going to do about it? She said, oh, I'll get rid of him for you. I said, brilliant. When can you come round? She said, oh, I don't need to come round. I can do it from here. So I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? You know, first you tell me there's an angry old man. You're 2 hours up the road, and you're telling me that you can get rid of this angry old man from there. So anyway, I just finished the conversation. I went home, and I said to my missus, I said, listen, I spoke to this lady today. I know I didn't tell you I was going to do it, but I phoned her about what you told me last night. And I said, this lady reckons there's an angry old man in the house. And my missus turns around and said, I know, I've seen him. So I'm thinking, right, you're telling me there's an angry old man. This lady's telling me there's an angry old man. You've never spoken, you've got no common friends. There's no way you could have possibly communicated. There must be some truth to it. So I phoned this lady back up. I said, listen, I don't know what you do, but I want to come and see you. So I went to see her, and she took me into a past life. She did past life regression. So I went and had my first past life experience. And I was like, shit, you know, this is kind of interesting. So I got a little bit hooked on it. Like, I get very curious when something, when I get like, you know, a scent on a bone, and something is a little bit tangible, there's some kind of confirmation, I want to explore it to the ends of the earth. So I started seeing this lady 2 or 3 times a week for about 3, 4, 5 years, I can't remember, ages, going into hundreds of my past lives. She taught me how to remote view, how to bring my light out of my body and travel, all sorts of things. So she became my first kind of spiritual human guide on this planet. So I kind of had that kind of brief experience with my wife, and went into a couple of past lives, then had the accident. And the accident is what really kind of changed things, because shortly after the accident, my missus again, like she was involved in a lot of this at the start, you know, she was a catalyst in so many different ways, but she had a headache and she's lying down on the bed, real bad migraine, can't open her eyes. And I thought to myself, I can take this out of your head. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. So I've gone over, she's lying on the bed, I saw the headache, it was green. I've grabbed it and pulled it out of her head. And she got up off the bed like she didn't have a headache. And I was like, fuck, that's a bit weird, you know, but I didn't really think too much else of it. I just carried on doing what I was doing. And then several months later, we ended up emigrating. We moved to New Zealand. And we were going to go there and live the rest of our lives there. We just thought it'd be a great place to bring up the kids. We weren't into the system in England, you know. So we thought, let's go to New Zealand. It's free, it's more open. So we ended up going to New Zealand. When we got to New Zealand, a friend of mine had a car accident. And her partner phoned up and asked if I could help. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to help? I'm in New Zealand, she's in hospital in England. The doctors have said, you know, you may never walk again, and you're probably going to be in hospital for at least a year. This is what her partner was telling me. So, anyway, my ego was saying, there's nothing you can do, Jerry, there's nothing you can do. But my intuition was saying, get some crystals, put them on your chakra points, and go and lie on the bed. So I did that, and then all of a sudden I was in a hospital room. You know, I somehow ended up in a hospital room, boom, just like that. And I'm looking at her, she's in front of me lying down, and all of this light started pouring out of my hands. There's all this code and stuff, and I just knew what to do. I started putting her body back together and doing all this stuff. I don't know why I was doing it or how I was doing it, but my hands were just moving. And I did this every day for a couple of weeks, and she walked out of hospital with the use of a Zimmer frame in 12 weeks, and the doctors were flabbergasted. And I thought to myself, did I do something? Didn't I do something? Is this just my crazy imagination? But when she came out of hospital, she said, you know, she phoned me and she said, Jerry, I woke up one night, I looked at the side of my bed and said, what are you doing here? She saw me in a hospital room. So I'm thinking, okay, I saw her, I was in the hospital room and she saw me, but I was in New Zealand, my body was in New Zealand. How is this possible? So I started to realize that, you know, what actually takes place inside of your mind, what you're actually, where you're viewing, where you're kind of imagining, your imagination's actually reality. If you see it in here, it's a reality somewhere within the quantum field. So around this same sort of time, I met this old guy and he taught me how to meditate. I'd never meditated in my life. And he had a pyramid in his garden. And I used to go there every day. After the gym and sit in his garden and just meditate. Sometimes with my eyes closed, sometimes with my eyes open. One time I was in there, I had some crazy experiences in there. I'll tell you about two of them because they're quite important. One day I was sat there with my eyes open and my feet turned to balls of fire, like flames were coming off my feet. And I'm looking down at my feet. They're not burning, but there's flames coming off them. And then Jesus appeared. And I'm looking at him. He said, Jerry, you can walk wherever you want to go in this life. Don't be scared. No fear. And then he turned and there was some steps behind him and he walked up the steps and through a door. So I followed him. And I was in the Last Supper. And we were all sat around the table and I was Matthew. And there's grapes and there's wine and Jesus is there giving his speech and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I looked out the window and there was a massive spaceship. And they were kind of showing me that, you know, this parallel reality. They were showing me that, you know, extraterrestrials have been around for a long time, all of this sort of stuff. They were showing me that extraterrestrials have been around for a long time. So I had this experience, and then I came back through the door, back down into the garden, and that was it. And then a couple of weeks later, so they'd been showing me that extraterrestrials had been around for a long time. So I had this experience, walked back out the door, back down the steps into the garden. That was that. 2 weeks later, I'm sat in this pyramid again, and I'm meditating with my eyes open, and then this little space pod comes and lands in the garden. There's the only way I can describe it. It was small. You could fit two people in it, or two beings, and there was a blue being inside of it. So I've gone over to the space pod, got inside, and we flew through this tunnel of lights for like 4 seconds, 5 seconds. What actually happened when I got inside the space pod, it was like my consciousness was taken to where we were going to. I saw where we were going before we got there. And then somehow everything was sucked through this tunnel, like the rest of my consciousness or the rest of something. And then we ended up the other side, above water, above a beach. I've got out the space pod, walked up the beach, and there's all of these blue beings, like 200 of them, maybe more. And I knew they were from Lyra. They're about 6.5, 7 feet tall. They were androgynous. They were really fit and healthy. Like it was like they all had six packs, real lean and stuff. And they hugged me. And the love that I felt was just like mesmerizing, indescribable. It was so, so, so beautiful. I'd never experienced a love like it. And it was like I just felt like I was home. It was amazing. I was on Alpha Centauri. That's where we went to. And anyway, they cleared a pathway and they led me through, up the beach, through these kind of trees and these woods, and into this building that was like made of lights. And there was this really old, ancient, like Lyran in there. I knelt down on the floor, and all of this orange light started to pour into my crown chakra, and it was full of geometry and symbols and stuff. And, you know, some of the symbols that you see, like Metatron's cube, things like that, but it was different. It was like this geometry that was kind of flexible and alive, and it's pictured in my book Star Magic Heal the Universe. I got someone to try and draw it, like I described it, and they did an all right job on it, but it's not 100%, but it's pretty accurate. But this stuff was pouring into my crown. Anyway, it lasted for a little while, I don't know how long, and then these two beings just picked me up and frog marched me back to the space pod, stuck me inside, back through the tunnel, back into the garden, back into the pyramid. And then nothing really happened in my life for about, I don't know, like a year or so, maybe longer. We'd opened up a gym in New Zealand, and the gym was going really well. Like we were training, it was a mixed martial arts gym, fitness gym, things were going well. And then one day I woke up and I said to the missus and kids, we've got to go back to England. And they looked at me like I was mad, like, why? We've just settled in New Zealand, why have we got to go back? I said, I don't know. I said, but I have to go. So after a few weeks of me persuading them, that we put a manager in charge of the gym, put our stuff in storage, packed our bags, jumped on a plane. When we got back to England, things just went into overdrive. I was out running one morning, it was a Sunday, and I saw some fairies flying around a tree. And I'm stood there in the road, and I'm looking at these fairies, just like, what is going on? And then an angel came down, and the angel says, my name's Archangel Gabriel, you need to write a book. So I'm like, what book do I need to write? And he goes, it's called Into the Lights. It's about your life story. So I ran home, opened up my laptop, boom, 4 weeks, this book's written. So I published it. Afterwards, I realized that it wasn't really about the book. It was about what was happening to me whilst I was writing the book. I was connecting to this higher source. And as soon as I finished writing the book, I started seeing this code everywhere. The code that was in this orange download on Alpha Centauri a couple of years before, it was everywhere. Like now when I'm looking at you, it's in between us. I'm looking at the camera, the lights, it's in between us, it's everywhere. And it used to really frustrate me and do my head in because it was really kind of like intrusive and like just annoying in a way. But I'm saying to my guides, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? They said, you've got to meditate more. You're not meditating enough. So I started getting up at 5 o'clock every morning with my son, Josh. I can't remember how old he was at the time, but you know, he might have been like 8, maybe younger, 9, I don't know. And we were going into these ancient mystery schools in our meditation. And there was loads of other people in there too, not just us. We were sat at those old wooden desks like you get in an old classroom at school. And there was men, women from like all different parts of the planet. There was no other beings there, just humans. And there was a guy at the front of the classroom with these scrolls, and he was opening these scrolls, and there were all these symbols. And these symbols were the same symbols that I was seeing in the air and that came in the orange download of light. So we went into this meditation every day for 9 months and sat for 2 hours in these classrooms learning what to do with these symbols. And then after 9 months, people started coming into my life that needed healing. I was thinking, let me just see if this stuff works. And I was trying it and it was working. And after a while, I thought, I'm going to go to a spiritual exhibition. So this was before Star Magic. I created these little flyers and just put energy healing. That was it, or distance healing or something, I can't remember. These really shitty little flyers, and went to this exhibition and set up a stand. And I said that I was going to draw names out of the hat for free healings. So loads of people wrote their names down, and what I did is I phoned them all up and said they'd won, because I wanted to practice. Yeah. So I gave like 70 or 80 people a free healing, and people were getting some amazing results. So I thought to myself, maybe I can charge people for this and actually, do something legal in my life, for the first time, and earn money a good way. So I started Star Magic. I did loads more free healings to start with, and started getting testimonials and all this sort of stuff, and had some amazing results, just so I had some proof, so that when I went out and put my website up, people would actually know that this stuff was real. So that's how it all started. That was back like 2016, like March 2016.
So when you look back on all of it, do you feel like it was planned, basically?
In a way, yeah.
It wasn't left for, most people have to meditate before they get experiences. But it's like you're shortcutted in a way. And also your past lives must be, like you say before, you must have done this before.
Yeah.
Bringing the information again, maybe?
Yeah, I have done similar things in past lives. In a lot of my past lives, I've been very dark. This is the first life that I've lived as a human being in the last quite a few that I haven't killed anyone. So, and that is a big thing for me in this reality, because I've had lots of opportunities to kill people, and I've had lots of times when I could have been in serious trouble or been killed myself, and I've always managed to find myself out of the situation and escape, or not get arrested, or whatever it was. And I now know that I've been looked after on this journey, because I had to do this. This was part of my plan. So yeah, it was orchestrated. And since I've met these blue beings from Lyra, they told me to write another book called Star Magic Heal the Universe. So I wrote that book. And then one day they told me to go and meditate near where I live, up on this hill. And as soon as I go into my meditation, the whole town, which I was looking at from this hilltop, disappeared. And they showed me planet Earth and the Christ consciousness grid, the icosahedron, like a big 20-sided shape around the planet. And there were all these little dots. And I said, what are those dots? They said, they're healing centers. I said, what are you showing me those for? They said, you got to build those. So I just thought for a second. I was like, well, if I build them, who the hell is going to run these things? They said, you've got to train people. So I was like, okay. So I ran home and I designed this training program based on the book. And I put it up online. Boom, within a couple of weeks it had filled up. And I was like, okay, so I'm supposed to be doing this. We've trained, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of people since. So yeah, and we've been training people for 2 years now. We've bought our first piece of land in Madeira. I was in Romania last week. We're probably going to get another piece of land out there, which I've just found. So we're just buying up some land at the moment to build these healing centers, and we're still training people. We've got an academy. So yeah, this is kind of what we're up to. This is how it all came about.
So going back, we talked in depth in part 2 about that, I think, because I was on one of your courses, so I know I just saw little miracles happening all around me. So I know what it's like to be part of that. And I've been doing healing for a while, but to see you, what you call it, when you put the hand, the God's hand, is that?
God's mouth, and yeah.
And you talk to someone, say what you want to get rid of. 10 seconds later, they're on the floor, and they could be there for 4 hours, shaking like a leaf, some of them. And I'm thinking, wow, what's going on here? They're obviously getting rid of a lot of stuff, but
yeah,
it's like magic. Boy, it's like magic.
Yeah.
But to anyone looking, is this real? Have you paid that person to do that? But there's about 5 of them all around there shouting, men, women.
Even my friends, like from old, like they have looked at some of these videos and they phoned me and said, Jerry, how much are you paying these people to fall down on the floor? You can pay me, I'll come and do that shit. Like, there's that kind of skepticism. So I understand what you're saying, and if people don't understand it, I mean, I would have 12, 13 years ago thought this was complete rubbish, you know. And if you'd have told me I was going to be doing this, I would have laughed in your face, because it is so far removed from where I was and what I knew, what I believed in at the time.
Okay, going back to these blue beings, I know, do you know Corey Good?
Yeah.
He talks about blue beings. Is it more bird-like, I think? Are they the same being?
Different.
Different.
Yeah.
But still the same height, I would say, and masculine and... Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say masculine. I mean, they've got a fierce masculinity about them, but they've also got a real fierce femininity about them too. The love that emanates from these beings is otherworldly and beyond human love. It makes you melt, and you feel a deep sense of peace and calm, and it's just indescribable. So there definitely is. I mean, masculine and feminine really is a human 3D term. There is no masculine and feminine. Yes, there's men and women, but within men and women, there are a masculine and feminine aspects. And we're trying to kind of, it's more of a dualistic way of looking at it. What we need to do is just bring ourselves as beings into equilibrium and balance the light and the dark aspects of us. Not necessarily masculine and feminine, but just be fierce and ferocious, be calm and loving, get all of that into balance. You know, love unconditionally, be compassionate, but enforce your boundaries if you need to, you know?
Okay. So to put a finish to part one, your life before star magic, is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, as a child, did you like looking at the stars, to say? People like looking at UFO programs? That's the normal type, typical starseed type person.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and this could take us on a whole other avenue. But when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't really necessarily look at the stars and stuff. I used to have crazy nightmares. I used to wake up in the night, and all I know is that I'd be stood on my headboard trying to climb the walls, screaming, or I'd be running around the house trying to get away from something, and my mum would be like, you know, Jerry, it's okay, you're having a bad dream, son. And I'd be like, you know, sort of coming round in the middle of the night, and my mum and dad would carry me back to bed. This went on for years and years and years. It wasn't until literally a few years ago that I realized what was happening. I was being taken in my dream time and by other beings, negative beings, and they were doing not some very nice things. When all this started happening, I started being approached in some crazy situations by negative beings in the physical. They came into my space. They've attacked my son, my daughter, all sorts of situations. And I found my birth mother, because I'm adopted, and I found my birth mother when I was 25. And we had a really good relationship for a while. We don't see each other so much now, but when I started having these kind of visits and started getting lots of flashbacks from these dreams in my childhood, I contacted my mum and asked her more about my birth, because my dad went missing and all this sort of stuff. And she told me that when she was pregnant with me, I knew this part, but she got pregnant. She didn't tell her mum and dad, and she went from Birmingham to Cheltenham into this home for young women that were pregnant without partners at the time. When she came to give birth, they whipped her into this room. 2 men came in with masks, didn't say a word, didn't give her any drugs, were mean to her and poking her and prodding her. They left her for 13 hours. 13 is quite significant because it's the number of the divine feminine. And all this happened at a very specific hour, which added up to a number 8. I was born on the 8th of March. She gave birth at a number 8. I was born at 3:50 in the afternoon. when they came in to give birth, when they came in to deliver me, they got a massive pair of scissors, cut her vagina, no medication, ripped me out, stuck me into another room and left me there on my own. And I know that they did that to kind of traumatize my mum and to traumatize me so they could do other things to me, psychologically and mentally. But this is a whole other story. And I feel that somehow I was supposed to come to this planet to do star magic, but some other beings wanted to stop it at all costs.
So before you were born, you were known about. You know?
That's what I feel, yeah. Even, again, 8 weeks before star magic started, I was in a really serious car crash. And, you know, I could have died. A taxi came through a crossroads speeding. It was Boxing Day. And it was 26th of December 2015, I think, which is an 8. And it happened at 8 o'clock in the evening. And this taxi came through the crossroads, and I went into a lamppost, went through the windscreen, and then the car span up the road. Long story, but I survived it. But I feel something tried to take me out then before Star Magic started, because they knew the timeline, and they knew that if I'd started, I'd have a big impact on changing the frequency and helping many human beings step into their power and be authentic and find that inner wisdom, which is what we're doing. We're setting people free. We're helping people climb out of the system and make up their own rules and regulations and play the game of life how they should be playing it. Free, sovereign beings. And Star Magic is a big catalyst for that, and it's only very early. We've been going for 3 years. You know, imagine what will happen in the next 20. I'll still only be 60. I've got loads of time left, you know? So, you know, it's going to have a massive impact on this planet is what I'm saying, and these beings didn't want it to happen.
Okay, we talked deeper about that in part 2 about what ascension is, and I guess you're very much a part of that. I don't know if you believe in that, or but it's going from 3 dimension to 5th dimension, and then...
I mean, definitely. I mean... When we say ascension, I think some people misinterpret that. They think we're ascending and we're going somewhere. We're not really going to go anywhere. We're just changing our frequency so that we can operate in a different vibrational space or spectrum of light or frequency band. So instead of calling it 5th dimension, maybe 5th density. Yeah, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th density, because our rate of vibration and rate of oscillation, which is the rate which light moves away into the center point, the faster that happens, the higher we vibrate, and the more we kind of ascend into these higher vibrational spaces. And all this 3D stuff like tends to fall away. You know, you just tend to not be around people that are vibrating on your level.
I guess what they say, you see 2% of what's around you. That's what they normally say. So there's 98% you don't see. So as you raise your vibration, as you see more angels and fairies, and I guess the colours start coming through as well. I guess all that starts to happen, and that's what it's maybe. And yeah, interesting stuff. So to finish off this part 1, is there anything else you think might be? Because you didn't go through NK Ultra or any brainwashing thing. You didn't try to brainwash you as a kid or split your mind up like they do with some people. They just traumatised you, but then left you, it would seem.
Yeah, I was traumatised like at birth, and then I was adopted, but I went through a couple of foster homes first. When I had my flashbacks, I know that I was raped and abused as like a 3-month-old baby. So all of that stuff had something to do with it. You know, but it is what it is, and I'm 100% happy with the journey that I've been on, and I know that I've been on it for a reason. And you know, whatever happened. You know, this is just a big jigsaw puzzle that we're playing. It's a big spiritual game, and all of these people that play these kind of darker roles, their souls are not necessarily bad. They're just playing out the part that they needed to play out. You got to think about like Saddam Hussein or Hitler. You know, I mean, a soul thought, you know what, I'm coming into that body. I'm going to be Hitler. You know, knowing what was going to happen. I mean, is that a soul that's bad, or is that a brave soul? I don't know. There's many ways of looking at it, you know.
You've got to have your shadow side, and we all have that, like you said.
Yeah, all of these atrocities that happen in the world, they're showing us where we don't want to be as a human race. They're waking us up. Some of these bombings and plane crashes or whatever it is, murders, whatever's going on, shootings, there's some crazy shit happening, forest fires. They're showing us what we don't want. And we're coming together as a collective. But people haven't really come together enough and really fully opened their hearts and come together in a way that we can unify and maximize that group strength. People are still too scared of the system. But it is changing, it is dissolving, and we've just got to keep doing what we're doing and shining our lights, and hopefully it'll happen a bit quicker.
Okay, on that note, we've finished on